Romance authors, we need to have a serious talk about third act breakups. And you know the ones I'm talking about. Everything is going great, they're in love, everybody's happy, and then all of a sudden somebody does something out of character, like has a meltdown, or they have some weird miscommunication that could be solved with just a 30-second conversation, and then they break up. It's just so annoying. Plus, we need to have a serious conversation about how this is throwing our readers out of the story. So in this video, I want to break down why the third act breakup sucks so much, why trad publishing is the one ruining everything, and what we can do better to add conflict to make it hurt in a good way. So what exactly is a third act breakup? So glad you asked. So the third act breakup is a time period during the third act of a book or movie or whatever, where the two characters, as you might guess, break up. But here's a thing that I feel, plus I've heard plenty of other readers talk about over their time reading books. They don't like the third act breakup very much. But here's the thing, the third act breakup doesn't have to suck. Reason number one that third act breakups suck is they lean into the miscommunication trope. Take The Deal by Elle Kennedy as an example. Now, mind you, I really like The Deal, hence the reason I read the entire off-campus series and read the sequel series. I have not read Briar You, and not the point. The Deal has your two main characters in a relationship, and then Hannah is approached by Garrett's father and says that he's gonna cut Garrett off if they continue dating. So instead of going to Garrett, where they've had really good communication up until this point, she doesn't go to Garrett and say, hey, your dad's threatening me. Maybe we should cool off for a little bit, figure this out. No, she just breaks up with him without explaining why. She doesn't have a clear conversation with the man she is in love with. And that just felt so it threw me out of the story that I just couldn't handle it. On the flip side, take The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas, for example. You learn pretty early on that Lena actually had an issue where she was with a professor, dated a professor, and she was called all kinds of names. There was a lot of misogyny happening during that relationship. And so when Aaron gets promoted above her, it only just it really triggers that trauma response that she had during that time period with her previous boyfriend. So Elena was able to kind of plant seeds throughout the book, knowing that there was going to be a third act breakup. Now, do I know that for a fact? No. However, it's only really just clear to me that this was planned from the beginning. The Deal doesn't feel planned. The Deal feels like she wrote the book and then the publisher was like, you gotta put a third act breakup in, which we're gonna get to later in the video. For me, the third act breakup in The Spanish Love Deception worked. It was a trauma response. She didn't know how else to handle it. And she just was like, you know what? This isn't gonna work for me. I can't do this again. And Aaron heartbrokenly accepts that, even if he doesn't want to. That is an example of a good third act breakup. The second big reason why third act breakups are terrible is people act out of character. Much like what I said with The Deal, right? Hannah and Garrett had really good communication throughout the book. She had shared with him some of her darkest traumas. They were really great at communicating until the third act breakup. It just doesn't make any sense. The character acted so weird and it just didn't work. And it threw me out. It's so frustrating when you spend 250 pages with these people and they can sometimes act so emotionally mature throughout the majority of the book, and then suddenly it's like they refuse to listen or follow instruction, or they just storm out in the middle of an argument and that's it. It's just done. It just doesn't always work. And for the most part, like I said, trad publishing is to blame. Now, this is obviously something that happens in indie publishing as well. I'm not gonna sit there and say this is why indie publishing is the way to go, or only read indie published books. I certainly don't. Most of these books behind me are trad published. Here's the issue with trad publishing. They have a specific brand, a specific voice, a specific formula that they want their authors to follow. And so when we have a book like The Deal, where maybe there wasn't initially a third act breakup, maybe there was some other kind of conflict toward the end, but the publisher was like, this isn't as drama filled, this doesn't fit what we're looking for, so you need to give it a third act breakup. In order to actually publish your book, you gotta go with what the publisher wants to do. Future video, look out, I'm gonna talk about why I went indie. So because of that, because we know that the formula is two people have a little meet cute, stuff happens, they fall in love, they somehow break up, and then they get back together. That's always been the formula. Look at literally any rom-com movie out there. For the most part, there is some form of a third act breakup, or at least the majority of them are. The more popular ones are gonna have that. Same thing with rom-coms and books. That is just how it works. That is the formula that needs to be followed, or at least the publishers feel like needs to be followed. So because of that, we have authors that don't really think about it and just go third act breakup, either to sell their book to an agent or publisher initially, or they are told by their publisher, hey, put in a third act breakup. We need that here. And then it just feels out of place. It feels like an afterthought. And that is not the way it should be. So what can authors do to make the third act breakup suck less? Well, that's pretty simple because I already talked about with the Spanish love deception. So let's talk about it again. Now, I am not an outliner. I am not a planner. I know essentially what the story is going to be. I know some of the big moments that I want to have happen. But aside from that, I am a discovery writer. Sometimes my characters take me on a wild ride. My current work in progress just decided to start a fire for some reason. So my characters are dealing with that now. Anyway, but one of those big things I plan from the beginning is, will there be a third act breakup? Like I talked about the Spanish love deception, that felt like from the get-go, from the outline, she wanted to put in a third act breakup and planted those seeds throughout the course of the book. So when it happened, I didn't go, why? This is so out of character. Had we not known about her ex-boyfriend being her professor and how she was treated when people found out about the relationship, that would have felt very out of character for her to all of a sudden be like, I can't do this, right? That would have felt very out of character. But those seeds have been planted in the reader the entire way through the book. And that right there is the crucial aspect of making the third act breakup work. When the reader can sit there and go, that makes sense. I'm not gonna tell you that your father is threatening me. No, we can't have that kind of conversation behind closed doors where his father can't hear you. Seriously, the end of that just made me so angry. That just feels so weird and so out of character and so miscommunication-y. I just can't handle it. But had we planted that from the beginning, conversations with Garrett about the father being like, hey, I don't trust this girl, or at least more of them, because I don't remember them having that conversation ever. I just remember Garrett's dad being an ass, so that didn't surprise me. It's one of those things that you can just continue to plant the seeds throughout the course of the book. Maybe Hannah also has problems telling him things throughout the course of the book. Does she? Sometimes, yes. She had a very traumatic experience early on in her life, and it takes her a while to have that conversation with him. But it couldn't have been something that massive because of course it takes her a while to trust somebody with that information. She should have kept little things from him so that when she kept this thing from him, it made better sense. Anyway, that's how authors can do it better. Now, this is less of an issue, but another thing that can make those third act breakups work a lot better is ensuring that whatever one of the main characters does is not irreparable damage to the relationship. No cheating. It's not Ross and Rachel after all. The reader has to continue to believe that they're right for each other. Even if we start by disliking one of our main characters to start with, like a rivals to lovers or enemies to lovers, grumpy ex sunshine, those kinds of tropes can lead down the path of I don't like this main character to start. This person is kind of a douche or kind of a jerk, but then by the end, the character has to be redeemed. So the third act breakup can't bring them back to this place. It has to stay here, grounded in this part of the character story. You can't all of a sudden go back to the jerk. The book I actually just finished kind of went that direction, just a little bit, and it didn't thrill me. The next thing we need to do to make sure that the third act breakup doesn't suck is we need to stay out of the they just need to have a conversation territory. Like I said, miscommunication, one of my least favorite tropes on the face of the planet, because it just talk to each other. You're supposed to be in love. I get that early on in relationships, you're having trouble having conversations sometimes. Communication isn't always the best right away. That sometimes takes time in a real life relationship. This is fantasy. Let us see good communication. Let's not see toxicity. So basically what you need to ask yourself is, if they had a conversation about this, would the result be the same? If Hannah had gone to Garrett, I'm gonna keep going back to that well, okay? Had Hannah gone back to Garrett and said, your father is threatening me, Garrett could have given her the fix that he eventually gives her anyway. The third act breakup could have been solved with just a conversation. The result would have been different had they just talked. And that's one of the things that authors really need to focus on. When it comes to Spanish love deception, she did have a conversation with him. I can't do this again. This old wound in my soul, in my gut, in my heart, it's too much. And I can't do it. So she breaks up with him. If we have a character who's afraid of vulnerability from the beginning and we never quite get past that wall, that third act breakup makes sense. There can be external pressure like family or finances or career. That's okay. Let's say, for example, you have someone who gets offered a job somewhere else. So let's say the book is set in Los Angeles, California, and the job is in New York. Then they need to have that conversation. Can we have a long distance relationship, or is it best for us to try and move on? That external conflict makes sense. It's hard, even in our digital age, it's hard to maintain a long distance relationship. I can speak from experience. And so the idea that the third act breakup is caused by that, or even, like I said, it makes sense for the deal for there to be because there is such a class difference. Like, why not Garrett's dad convinces him that Hannah is only using him for money? Would that be out of character? A little bit, because Garrett hates his father. So I guess that doesn't make entire sense, but at least it makes better sense, right? The external conflicts, of course, being class difference and families, which is the external conflict that eventually breaks them up, but it's done in a much more effective way. It just makes better sense. So that's why the third act breakup currently kind of sucks, why trad publishing is to blame, and ways that we can get around it, whether we're indie or trad. Focus on making the third act breakup from the beginning, plant the seeds, and continue on your way. There you go. So now I want to hear from all of you. First, question for the readers. How do you feel about the third act breakup, and do you agree with me that these kinds of changes being implemented into a story would make you hate the third act breakup a little less? Or do you like the third act breakup to begin with? Hey, this is a conversation. I am not here to judge. And question for authors, without getting too spoilery in the comment, let us know either about a work in progress that you're working on right now where the third act breakup is going to play a role, or a book that you've already published and how you handled the third act breakup. Again, try not to get too spoilery because we don't want to spoil your books on my page. And when you do that, if it is published, please leave the name of the book in the comments so that readers can find you. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, share it with some friends, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel because honestly, all of those things help in the algorithm. And I am still such a small platform at this point, and I would love to reach more people. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!